Welcome back, everyone. It is Dr. Linder, and in this next video, what we're going to be talking about is skeletal muscle tissue and the microscopic parts of it. I mean, here in this picture, we see the bone, right? This is a long bone, and we see that there is a tendon that attaches to it, right? But all of this stuff here, this is all the muscle. But it's not the muscle itself that's attaching to the bone, it is the tendon. It's that the muscular portion is the contractile portion. It's generating the tension. It transmits the tension here to the tendon. The tendon attaches to the periosteum of the bone and makes it move. Okay. The smaller microscopic parts, there are some terms here. We do have a muscle cell. We have an endomysium, fascicle, perimysium, and epimysium. Okay, these are some of the different terms. Now, let's see if I can show you here in this picture. So if we look on the top, we see that we have muscle fibers. Now, these muscle fibers are going to have a layer of protection going around it, okay? Those muscle fibers are going to be covered by something called an endomysium, okay? So you can have, let's say, here's a muscle fiber, here's a muscle fiber, here's a muscle fiber, here's a muscle fiber. And around each of these muscle fibers is going to be this layer of protection called an endomysium. Okay? Now, there can be another muscle fiber, another muscle fiber, and another one. And why don't we draw another endomysium around it? Endomysium and endomysium. So we have these endomysiums going around it. Now, a group of these can be clustered together like this, and another one can be clustered around this. So inside we had the endomysium. Now this one here, I'll put P for perimysium, like that. These perimysiums, another name for this cluster is also called a fascicle that we see up on the top here, fascicle. So this is a fascicle, and then we also have another fascicle here. I'll put an F for fascicle. Now we can have a group of fascicles. Whoop, let me go back here. You can see here on the bottom left, here's a fascicle. And then here's another fascicle. And here's another fascicle, right? All of these are different fascicles. And now you're going to have something that surrounds all of the fascicles. And that's called the epimysium. That's the epimysium. So we have an endomysium, we have a perimysium, and an epimysium. Those are the main layers, okay? Now, the fascia, really important. Fascia covers just about everything in the body. It covers muscles, and it covers organs, and it covers blood vessels, arteries, veins, and even nerves. And if you're a carnivore, and let's say you eat chicken or you eat turkey, sometimes if you have, let's say, a drumstick of a chicken and you peel off the epidermis and the dermis, you peel off the skin, you see the meat. The meat is the muscle, but there's always this translucent clear layer superficial to the muscle. Well, that clear sheath is what we refer to as fascia. And fascia is really the problematic portion of muscle. You ever know, like when someone breaks an arm, or let's say they break a clavicle and then the arm is in a sling or the arm is in a cast? When the arm is in a cast, the arm is typically bent at, let's say, 90 degrees. And a few, let's say 4 or 5 weeks later, the cast comes off. What happens to the arm? Number one, the muscle was a little bit atrophied. It wasted away because it wasn't used or stimulated. The nerves weren't stimulated. But the other thing that happens is that the arm can't straighten out fully. It's adapted and to its shortened state, and that's because of fascia. Fascia is highly adaptive and it tends to adapt to the position that the muscle is in. If a muscle is in a shortened flex state, then that fascia stays in that contracted state and the muscle can't elongate. It can, but it takes retraining, nice and slow, to eccentrically elongate those muscle fibers, and it starts to break up adhesions that may exist within the fascia. Okay. All right, so to review, we have a bunch of muscle fibers, and those fibers are surrounded by endomysium. If you have a cluster of 10 to 100 of those fibers that are surrounded by its layer called the perimysium, we also refer to that as a fascicle. And if you have a bunch of those fascicles, then they're surrounded by the epimysium. And then the epimysium surrounds the entire skeletal muscle. Now, tendons are going to transmit the contractile force to the bone, to the periosteum of the bone, to move it. Okay? There's a type of tendon that's called an aponeurosis. And an aponeurosis just means that it's a broad, flat tendon. We see this term aponeurosis if you look up the lats. I'm going to abbreviate lats because I can, but as a student, you should know that the lats is just an abbreviation for a muscle called the latissimus dorsi. It's the widest muscle of the back. If you look at the origin to that muscle, the origin is where the muscle begins. It actually originates on the lower six thoracic vertebrae, all of the lumbar vertebrae, some of the sacrum and pelvis. But the origin is referred to as the thoracolumbar aponeurosis. Thoracolumbar aponeurosis because it's a broad, flat tendon that goes from the lower six thoracic vertebrae and all five lumbar vertebrae. That's a broad attachment. When you look at the biceps brachii and you look at the insertion of it, it's at the proximal radius called the bicipital aponeurosis because it's a broad, flat tendon. Okay, and you heard me mention fascia before. Fascia really covers muscles, it covers organs, it covers lymph, nerve, it covers everything. But it's the problematic features that it can remain in a shortened position if an extremity is kept in a shortened position. Okay, when we come back, I will get into the neuromuscular junction, the NMJ, the neuromuscular junction. And we'll be back after these messages.